Good morning, everyone. Sorry we're not live this week. We've had some issues. Samantha's out, not feeling great this week. So we're just sending out prayers for her and hoping that she feels better. And the other members, they might have other things going on, especially with Thanksgiving coming up this week. So we just lift our prayers up for them, hoping they're all okay. We're still in the book, The Big Leap, in the second chapter, which we'll get started in a minute. But for right now, I'm playing host this week. I'm Dan Sissick. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, where it's sunny but cool here. And I'll let the others jump out and introduce themselves. And then, as always, Catherine will start reading for us.
I'm Lori Emmons in frozen Denver.
Better than New York, though. Boy, they really got dumped on. God help all those people up there. I'm Catherine Clement, and I'll be reading. We're going to be on page 45 in the hardcover book. I'm not sure what it is in the Kindle, but 45, and we're starting at hidden barrier number 1, feeling fundamentally flawed. A feeling that I'm fundamentally flawed in some way. That's how one of my clients, Carl, described the barrier of feeling fundamentally flawed. And we can use his phrase as a definitive example of the most pervasive of the hidden barriers. Let's dismantle it piece by piece so you can see how it got its grip on Carl. Find out if his story resonates with your own. His upper limit mantra went like this: I cannot expand to my full creative genius because something is fundamentally wrong with me. If you have a deep, old feeling that there's something wrong, bad, or flawed about you, you will find yourself grappling with that issue every time you break through to greater love and financial abundance. When you surpass your upper limit thermostat setting, a little voice admonishes you from deep within your mind, you should not be this happy or rich or creative because you are fundamentally flawed. This thought creates cognitive dissonance, the mind rattle that occurs when you try to hold two opposing thoughts at the same time. Given that I am fundamentally flawed or wrong or bad, how can I possibly be this happy, rich, and creative? The cognitive dissonance must be resolved in one of two ways: by returning to your previous thermostat setting, or by letting go of the old limiting belief, which allows you to stabilize at a new higher level. The best way is to shine the light of awareness on the thought that you are fundamentally flawed and label it as what it is, an upper limit bug. I use bug in two senses here. It's like a computer bug because it's a false line in your code that causes a breakdown in your operating efficiency. It's like a bug in the mosquito sense too, because it bites you when you're going to higher levels of love, abundance, and creativity. You start slapping at the bug and bring yourself back down to your previous level. The other way to stop cognitive dissonance is to pull back from your success and not challenge the false belief. This move brings you back down into a zone you're familiar with. The bug wins and you lose. In Carl's case, it was easy to see where he picked up his bug, the feeling of being fundamentally flawed. He had started out his life as the first child of a powerful executive who would go on to run 2 different Fortune 500 companies. When my client was just out of diapers, though, his parents split up and got into an epic battle over money, a conflict that went on for years. His father remarried and started another family. So Carl's early life was spent shuttling back and forth between these hostile forces. Later, in a moment of alcohol-induced candor, his father confessed to Carl that he could never look at him without simultaneously feeling hatred for Carl's mother. The father had convicted Carl of a crime Carl couldn't understand or name. All he knew was that his father looked at him differently than his younger half-brother. Carl unconsciously convicted himself of the crime too. Years later, he would tell me, I figured if he looked at me that way, I must have done something wrong, but I could never get anybody to tell me exactly what I'd done. This next point is crucial. The invisible crime for which Carl was serving time had absolutely nothing to do with Carl. The father would have felt the same way about any child who occupied that role. You can see, though, how Carl and the rest of us who had been in similar situations would take it personally. After all, he was the one receiving the looks of misplaced hatred from his father. At 2 years of age, or 5 or 15, Carl had no way of knowing that the look was directed primarily at his mother. He had no way of knowing that he was completely innocent of the crime of which he'd been convicted. The fear of being fundamentally flawed brings with it related fear. It's the fear brings with it a related fear. It's the fear that if you did make a full commitment to living in your zone of genius, you might fail. It's the belief that even your genius is flawed and that if you expressed it in a big way, it wouldn't be good enough. This belief tells you to play it safe and stay small. That way, if you fail, at least you fail small. Lori, could I get you to hit your mute for me, please, babe? Thank you. Hidden barrier number 2, disloyalty and abandonment. When we are stuck behind the barrier of disloyalty and abandonment, our unconscious mantra goes like this: I cannot expand to my full success because it would cause me to end up all alone, be disloyal to my roots, and leave behind people from my past. If you're wondering what kind of person might have a barrier like this, I can tell you, my kind of person for one. This barrier caused me much consternation earlier in my life, and even now it still flickers through my mind from time to time. I'll tell you more about my story in a moment, but for now, focus on whether this barrier has shown up in your life. Here are 2 questions that can help you discover if you too have this barrier. Did I break the family's spoken or unspoken rules to get where I am? Even though I am successful, did I fail to meet the expectations my parents had of me? If you answered yes to either of these questions, you're likely to feel guilty later as you expand into more and more success. You're likely to feel at a deep and unconscious level that your quest for a life of your own and success on your own terms has come at the cost of leaving behind your roots and being disloyal to those who loved you. The guilt you feel makes you put on the brakes, holding yourself back from the ultimate success and keeping you from enjoying the success you already have. You follow breakthroughs of success with bouts of self-punishment. Here's a vivid example of hidden barrier number 2 in action. I counseled a newlywed couple just after they'd had a memorable encounter with this barrier. Robert had just finished his medical residency. Dee was an administrator at the university where Robert had received his MD. Their backgrounds couldn't have been more different. Robert was from old money family in New England, whereas Dee had been raised in a hippie enclave near Santa Cruz by a single mom. Robert's family didn't approve of Dee because she was 5 years older than Robert and didn't come from aristocratic stock. They probably would have disapproved even more had they known that Dee's mother also made her living by growing exotic herbs, some of which are illegal to possess. Nevertheless, Robert and Dee were deeply in love, and preliminary plans were made for a fancy wedding at the estate of Robert's family. On the insistence of Robert's family, the wedding was not to take place until after Robert got his first job as a physician. In a mood of euphoria, the day Robert completed his residency, they made a snap decision to do things their own way. They drove to Reno and got married in a wedding chapel. Without pausing even for lunch, they turned the car around and headed toward Santa Cruz. Dee's mother, Dorothy, was delighted when they called her with the news and promised to arrange a big party that night to celebrate the wedding. Robert and Dee decided to postpone calling his family to tell them the good news. Give me just a second to clear my throat. As they navigated the winding dirt road towards Dorothy's cabin, Robert and Dee had an impulse to pull the car into the woods for a pre-party cuddle. They spread a blanket in the woods and fell to celebrating their first married lovemaking adventure. In the heat of passion, they rolled off the blanket into a bed of poison oak. Poison oak can take 24 hours to produce symptoms, so they didn't realize they were a ticking time bomb of red and itchy rash. They proceeded to the party, where Dorothy and her friends provided a raucous welcome to the newlyweds. After dancing and singing into the wee hours, they collapsed into bed, only to awaken the next morning with a double-barreled dose of misery. Not only were they hungover, they were aflame with rash and itch. They spent the next few days in and out of ice cube baths, imbibing pain relievers and slathering on lotion. Robert, up until then a teetotaler, even took comfort in some of Dorothy's exotic herbal preparations. When they came in to talk to me a few weeks later, they were trying to make sense of this experience, but the sense they were making of it was not making them happy. Dee, looking through the cosmic colored lenses of her upbringing, wondered if the experience was a sign from the universe that they shouldn't be together at all. Robert's view was purely self-critical. I've treated cases of poison oak, he said. Why the hell didn't I notice what we were rolling around in? As I listened to their story, I saw a flashing neon sign that read, Barrier number 2. And when I explained to them how it worked, I could see relief flooding into their faces. Beyond giving them insight into why they had punished themselves so visibly and painfully, I also prescribed a radical treatment and offered them the equipment to carry it out on the spot. I handed them my telephone and invited them to call Robert's parents, who still hadn't been informed that their beloved son had wandered off the straight and narrow. They embraced this idea about as enthusiastically as a wild horse being offered a saddle for the first time. Therapists are prepared for such moments, though, and I convinced them that the longer they waited, the more difficult it would become. Behind every communication problem is a sweaty 10-minute conversation you don't want to have. However, the moment you work up the courage to have it, you collect an instant reward in relief, as well as open up a flow of communication that will allow you to resolve the situation. I listened as Robert and Dee broke the news and spoke their hearts to Robert's parents. After the first few minutes of uproar back and forth, the conversation turned harmonious and ended up with an invitation to have a big reception in New England rather than a wedding. Do you want to discuss these two before moving on?
I think, yeah, let's do that, because there's probably enough between these two that will cover enough ground. And I'm going to start out me. I feel a little bit of both of these barriers, to be honest, but the feeling fundamentally flawed, that one that kind of really resonates with me because of my background and my childhood and stuff. But I wanted to go to the point where he's talking about the bug. And I agree with like the computer bug idea that he was talking about, where he said, is the best way to shine light is to shine. Uh-oh.
Whoops, we lost him. So he was pointing out the best way is to shine the light of awareness on the thought that you are fundamentally flawed and label it as what it is. Here he is back. Go ahead. I just read that quote. The best way is to shine the light of awareness on the thought that you are fundamentally flawed and label it as what it is, an upper limit bug.
Okay, thank you. I use bug in two senses. It's like a computer bug because it is false line in your code and because a breakdown in your operating efficiency. It's like a bug. And this is the one that kind of, because I think, a computer bug we can all get, we feel there's something wrong in our fundamental makeup or, something really inside of us. But the mosquito one, where he says it's like a bug in the mosquito sense too, because it bites you when you are going to higher levels of love, abundance, and creativity. You start slapping at the bug and bringing yourself back down to your previous level. Well, in a way, most of the time, I'm trying to keep the mosquito away from me. And so therefore, I'm just trying to keep it from not even getting to me. And therefore, I don't think I'm trying to get back to my previous level. I think I'm trying to just not entertain it or have it even be there. But, and in it I don't, the way it's just the way he describes it, the bug biting at me, because I think when I'm looking at being fundamentally flawed, I don't think it's something that bites at me, or it's inherently there and it's always there. It just kind of uses the right moments to, like right now, when my laptop just all of a sudden decided to throw me off of here. That was like a computer bug. It was a nuisance. It was a kind of like a surge or something that just comes up and just throws you totally out of where you're at, and you can't get back to it. That's kind of how I look at it, and that's how I've always felt because of my upbringing and what I lived through. That even though now as I look back, I know it wasn't inherently my fault, but still there's that blame that I put on myself. So I think that's why I look at it more like the computer bug.
I can totally understand that limitation with my upbringing and my parents divorced and taking it on myself and having it affect everything in my life, that you can't do this right. And even, especially my dad, anything you did, it was never good enough. And it has cursed me my entire life that I just can't get it quite right. I have spent the last month or so rearranging this whole condo and cleaning things up and realizing that it's just going to be more dust fall and just move more stuff around. How I'm getting distracted here, that trying to be a perfectionist so that I gain the approval. Otherwise, I'm flawed. I didn't do it right.
Oh, funny that you. Oh, go ahead, Catherine, if you were going to.
I was just going to say that is one of the compensating behaviors for that feeling like you're fundamentally flawed or something's wrong with you, is that you become a perfectionist. Well, you can actually go one of two ways. It depends on if you're rebellious or not, but you become a perfectionist. There's all these lists of compensating behaviors that kind of go along with each one of these core beliefs, and overachieving and, you know, being a perfectionist, even becoming OCD, truly for some people, that stems from this same core belief. And that's why, doing talks like this, although it's, we can kind of brush it off and say, oh yeah, everybody has stuff in their childhood and, get over it and who cares and whatever. But these things are affecting every day of your life. So it really is something that once you shine awareness on it, like you said here in the book, once you see it for what it is, then you can choose to act differently. You'll catch yourself. But some people never track it down that that's where it comes from.
I was gonna say, after uh, Lori and you now both were talking about that. It's like I'm weird in the sense that there are times where I'm a perfectionist, and if I get focused on something, I'll be so focused on it until I feel it's right. And I know it's because of certain aspects of like with um, my mom, and it goes back to my not my real mother, my mom here that I love dearly, who passed last year. She always did this little thing where and she would always say, well, that's not how I would do it. And it wasn't so the fact that she said that, it was the tone of voice and the way she said it and the look on her face. And growing up, if we didn't kind of give in and do it that way to where she would be happy, you could feel the tension. So now I'm kind of like that in some ways. And it's weird that I took that on, even though I lived down here since I was 12. But the other part of me is, kind of like you said, you can be rebellious and be. I am not the perfectionist in everything either. And I tend to let things go, and I tend to let things become. And then I keep looking at it, thinking, okay, I really need to go through and get. But then I know once I get started in it, I'm going to become that perfectionist and want everything just to be right until I know it's all right and done and perfect. So for me, it's almost like that vicious cycle that I get in of where I'm fighting with both sides, and ultimately nothing gets done. And then I get more frustrated, and then I get more, and I don't even attempt to break through to my zone of genius because I'm stuck in that cycle between the two sometimes. And then I just kind of go on and meander on and just kind of, for lack of a better way of saying it, waddle through life because it's like I feel like I can't win on either end. And that's another part of what I deal with.
Yeah, I think that probably, I don't know, 95% of the population does that. And even if they do some self-help work, whether they ever get down to the really deep, deep stuff is a whole nother question. And it doesn't go away even, even once you identify it, it's still there. But it's just when you stop lying to yourself about stuff, then I think things just run a little, there's less dissonance. He brought up the dissonance. So when you're lying to yourself about stuff, or not being, maybe you're not lying, but you're not being truthful, or owning up to some stuff, then that causes dissonance. And most people in this world either don't care how they are, so they never like try to fix themselves, or, they spend an entire lifetime and fortunes trying to fix themselves. And that whole time they're focused on the problem instead of ever reaching their zone of genius. They never get there ever because they're just stuck in always being focused on the problem.
I have a question in what you just were stating and what you were talking about. And I hope I say this in the right way, without making it sound the way in my head, it's sounding in my head, but I'm going to try. Do you think that in some of what's out there available, that even though people try to get help, that sometimes, and I'm trying to say this in the best way possible, that people try to help them and end up not helping them in the best way based on their beliefs or how they interpret things, and they're not, and I'm not saying they're doing it maliciously or with intent or anything, it's just, and does that sometimes get in the way of people working towards what they're trying to achieve? I'll say it that way. Hopefully I've said it in a way that makes sense.
To me, that brought up the whole idea of you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can never please all the people all the time.
Yeah, everybody's running off of these beliefs. Most people don't recognize them. Very few people recognize them, but everybody's working off of them. So there's no way, unless somebody is just, absolutely conscious, they're living completely like they are operating only from their genius when they come up with this advice or whatever it is that they're transferring to another person. If they're in their zone of genius when that information comes to them, then it's probably not affected by their beliefs. But if they're trying to write a self-help book with their mind or something, that's totally going to be affected by their beliefs. So it really depends on how clean they get. It's kind of like a medium. Before you do any kind of psychic or medium work, you have to get in your zone where you're completely free of any thoughts, feelings, emotions, any of that. You have to be completely clear so that none of that interferes with the information coming through. And I think it's the same way with writing.
You guys, you made some good points, because even in looking at like some of the books we've gone through, I believe that a lot of the information, quite a few of the books we've done over the years, have been very helpful and been pointed out things. And I'm going to use the term here, in the zone of genius, where they were actively trying to put out information that would be helpful for anybody who uses, listens to it or accepts it with, and the best way I can say it, with best intentions, I guess, to try and for what they need to use it for. because I know for me, some of these books have helped me in some ways and helped point some things out about me and my own, you know, um, have I always utilized it in the best sense or in the best way or remembered some of the things I've learned? No, I'll be honest, life gets in the way and, sometimes I totally forget. And that's the other part of, I think, that if we're honest and if people are honest, maybe they don't take it as fully to heart as we all, or even in my case, that I believe I have, and trying to, follow through because I go through some of these books. I'm like, that's a cool idea, or I like that concept, you know, and I want to apply it into my life. But then 2 or 3 days later, have I really applied it? And that's the other part that, you know, is to really actively take some of this and use it.
Yeah, you can read books all day and even talk about them, like you say, and even, discover the joys in them, the little jewels in them and everything. But then whether you put them into your daily practice, that's why people pretty much, you know, it's kind of like a hamster wheel you keep running around on because we learn new stuff and then we forget about it. And, this fundamentally flawed belief, this is a belief established before the age of 2, and it's mother derived. It's a mother derived. And I want you to just consider for a minute that, their children are born into all kinds of situations. Like I was pretty much born into a divorce. They were divorcing as I was coming into the world, and so, and then I wound up with the grandmother, and thank God, for my grandmother. My grandmother was like a mom to me, and but as far as like think about a soul that has just come. I mean, if you believe that we are eternal souls and when we're not here or incarnated in a body somewhere, because I'm sure there's other planets and stuff that we can go to or universes or whatever, but if I'm not here, I tend to think of myself as being in heaven, is how I'll term it, because it is a place that is, I mean, I've been there, so it's a place that's just everything is love. Like you are completely engulfed. Every cell in your body is love. Every blade of grass sings the songs of love. Like it is the most, there's no way to even describe it. So just think about it. You're there, right? Then you get all excited. You're coming to Earth. You get slammed into this little tiny body that, I mean, I don't feel like I can fit as a spirit into my body the size that it is now. Can you imagine being like a zygote where 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 you're just, barely, and you're slammed into that. So you're here, you are this huge eternal being that is used to nothing but love. You're slammed into this little tiny 2-3 cell organism thing, and in a very harsh environment in some cases. Not everybody's pregnancy goes well, not everybody's birth goes well. Then you've got maybe a young mother, maybe it's her first child, doesn't know, is completely overwhelmed, doesn't know how to nurture a child. And yet, as animals, because we're animals, think about if you were a gazelle and, well, think, how wild animals, every once in a while, they just desert a baby for whatever reason, like a cat will have kittens, and maybe she'll nurse 5 of the kittens, and the 6th kitten she goes and drops off around the corner. They just abandon them. And, not here where we can just pick up the little kitten, feed it for, but let's say out in the wild, how long would that kitten survive? I mean, maybe not even an hour, really, like out in the jungle safari. Something would come along and eat it. Well, we're that little animal. We are. We're that little animal. And we feel like if we're not nurtured in the same way as where we just came from, which there's no way to recreate that love on earth. There is no way. Doesn't even come close. Even the love that I have for my children, which is the strongest love that I have, does not come anywhere close to what I feel when I'm on the other side. So here's this little animal that knows that it's going to die because it's been discarded, or at least it feels like it's been discarded, or it's unwanted, or it's unloved. And so as a human organism, as an animal, we feel like we are going to die. It's literally life or death now. And this is and then we're like, holy shit, this is Earth. Like, this is it. This is how it is. And then that stays with us. That is that fundamentally flawed. I'm not good enough. I'm discarded. I'm invisible, whatever it is. Like, that stays with us. That's like embedded into our nervous system. And that is where that's our original, all of those beliefs that because there's multiple ones that we do before we're about age 5. And that's what we base the rest of our life on, that trying to fix. We're trying to fix that we're broken when we never were broken to begin with. See, it's all false. It's really, 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 I mean, it can be brushed off, but it's really, it's proven now, and I think I said it last week and probably before that too, if we think that we're about to be eaten by the lion, our body sends chemicals and stuff to reinforce that. It sends out the adrenaline and all that stuff. And that's how we wind up with all these chronic illnesses and stuff that we deal with, because our bodies have gone haywire because of our thoughts, because we believe them. That's why I keep writing books about not believing thoughts.
I want to read some more of your books, Catherine.
Yeah, same here.
Oh,
But I'm gonna go back into what was it? I was just looking at. Oh, yeah, the hidden barrier 1, fundamentally flawed, where I was just looking at it, and then I was trying to focus on you and listen to what. Oh, okay. It's just, I'm going to go back to when you surpass your upper limit thermostat setting, a little voice admonishes you from deep within your mind. You should not be happy or rich or creative because you're fundamentally flawed. This thought creates cognitive dissonance. The mind rattles that. Okay, wait. This thought creates cognitive dissonance. The mind rattle that occurs when you try to hold 2 opposing thoughts at the same time. Given that I am fundamentally flawed or wrong or bad, how can I possibly be this happy, rich, and creative? And I think that's something that we've all dealt with, as you've stated, that we have this. We take this on, is the best way I'm going to say it. And it's kind of put on us, but we take it on too, because as a child, we don't understand and realize the difference, that we don't necessarily have to accept that which is what's being put upon us, but we do it because part of us is looking for approval, part of us is looking for acceptance, belonging, love, because of that's how it might be shown. And so, but I think it's true. You have two opposing thoughts fighting for superiority within you. And naturally, like he says, we go back to that one that we go to that, I hate to say it this way, gives us comfort because that's what we first learned and accepted. But yet all throughout our lives, it constantly is that battle. And the thing I'm even asking myself is, why have I not ever really recognized that battle within myself? Because I know it exists and I've gone through it, and I know the answer. Why have I let it continue on, or why do I go back to it? It's because it's that default. But it's just interesting how, as you get older, because there are some things where somebody will say something or something will happen, and I say, I'm not accepting that. I'm not allowing that thought to enter in my mind, and I don't. So why can't we do that with some of this other stuff?
It's hard when that inner child has those beliefs and feelings to overcome that. Excuse me. And it's just how we were designed. If we believe our soul has this plan before we even get here, like you say, Catherine, it's so big and so immense. How can it funnel down into this little existence of me? It's hard to override.
It's impossible to override because that is our fixed point here on Earth. So imagine that you were going to go on a trip and you put it into your GPS, the address, but there was no there were no coordinates on the map for the GPS to focus on. Like, there has to be a beginning. There has to be a set point, something that locks us into this reality, to the individuation of it. We came here to experience an individual experience, but then we forgot that we were really so much more. And but you can't. It's like if you're out on the sea and you're trying to navigate, you have to navigate by the stars. But if the stars were to move from one side of the sky to the other side of the sky overnight, that would really screw up your directions. Like, you have to have a fixed point of where you're at before you can go from there to anywhere else. And so that's what we do when we come into our little bodies. We assign fixed points. How is this world? What is this world like? Is this a hostile planet that I'm in? Is this a friendly planet that I'm in? Am I safe? Am I not safe? And we establish those fixed points. And that's what anchors us here. We can't really change those because it would break us in some kind of way. There wouldn't be. That's why some people that do, sometimes you hear about, well, most of the time you hear about somebody went to India, and they never like came back mentally. Like, they had a spiritual awakening and and lost their mind, basically, which is kind of what you do when you have a spiritual awakening. You lose your mind in a, punny kind of a way. But you have to, those are the coordinates that we were given, like when we came here, and those are the beliefs that we established when we got here, and we can't really just override them without really breaking our map, so to speak.
So in what he is talking about and what he's trying to, I think what he's trying to give people is a way of how to maneuver around those things, that so therefore we can stay on that path. This is how I'm putting it in my head based on what you just said, Catherine, of like the GPS and the idea, because I understand that idea fully. But there are times where even when we're out and about, we have to take detours because something's washed out or something's under construction, but yet we still need to get to where we want. And if in order to get to that zone of genius, learning how to maneuver the disruptions, constructions, washouts of the things that happen in our lives, that's these attributes that he's pointing out are things that we can do to help with that and understand what's happening, can help make that road smoother. And I think it's something that we all need. It's just whether or not going through and really making it a part of how we move forward with our lives. Interesting how, a book that wasn't sure about when we first started. I like the title, and the title is what leapt out to me, but a lot of what he's saying so far has been making sense and pointing out some things, and I appreciate that. We're almost at the top of the hour. Do you guys have any last thoughts or anything?
Just that it would be interesting to be able to rewrite the map that is apparently or seemingly guiding me that I'm trying to follow. And it just doesn't seem to work out and break through all those core beliefs that have you where you are. Y'all have a good,
Yeah. So go ahead, honey. I'm sorry.
I just said, go, everybody have a good week.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, even if we can't make them go away, once we shine the light of awareness on them, they don't affect us as much. And I think that's really where we're trying to get to anyway. It's just, how can these things not affect me as much? And really going through, I think, and like if you can just sort of go through a process where you look at your life and just take these first two that we've started with here, feeling fundamentally flawed, and what was the other one? Disloyalty and abandonment. Or even if you just want to start with one, feeling fundamentally flawed, and think about, if someone and just pretend it's someone else because it'll be easier than to own it up to yourself, but it is you. But you're thinking about, if somebody really felt fundamentally flawed, what kinds of compensating behaviors would they pick up, and then look at those, and then look through your life, through your whole life from birth until now, and just, take an hour, sit down and look at different situations in your life where you've used those compensating behaviors because of that belief. And when you can really look at your life and point out all the different times that you use them, and you say, oh, yeah, I see where I did that there, and I did it there, and I'm doing it here today, and you really start to see it, then the next time that that belief is challenged, pretty soon, and it takes practice, but pretty soon you catch it, and you're like, nope, I know exactly where that's going, and you make a new choice. And when you start making new choices and you start reconfirming to your consciousness that you are safe, that you are lovable, that you are perfect as you, because everybody is a unique being. So I don't know why we're always trying to compare ourselves to other people because we can't be other people. We're unique for a reason. So, get, once you, that awareness is there, those things don't affect you as much. And I can absolutely tell you that this works because I have seen a huge difference in myself and my own interactions, um, where I'm just catching it earlier and earlier and earlier. And I catch it before anything comes out of my mouth, which is really good. So I hope you guys have a great week, and I love you. And just, spend some time looking at your life and how some of these beliefs have affected you. And it's quite interesting and it's very helpful. And huge prayers out again for Samantha and her household. Love you guys.
Okay, yes, thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Lori, for joining this week. Hopefully we'll have the whole group next week and we'll be back live. Once again, we're going through the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. We're in the second chapter and we'll be starting with Hidden Barrier number 3 next week. As always, you can find us on Facebook at Mindset Mastery Collective there. Join our group, learn about what we're doing there. You can find us on YouTube, again at Mindset Mastery Collective. We have videos of everything we've done over the last, almost 9-10 years, however long we've been doing this. We've been doing this for quite a while. You can also go to our website at mindsetmasterycollective.com, get information on how to join us and be a part of the panel with us here on the Zoom. So we look forward to hearing from you guys next week, and hopefully someone will join us. With that, bye for now. See you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind.